Today, what we're going to look at is, first of all, the definition, the concept of traditional media, and then we'll look at, okay, don't, wait. Look at the concept of traditional media and then that of traditional communication. So, first of all, at the end of this lecture, students should be able to, first of all, define traditional media. Then secondly, they should be able to explain the concept of traditional communication, be able to distinguish between traditional media and traditional communication, and then identify major forms of traditional media among Igbo people, as well as explain the role of traditional media in Igbo society, and finally evaluate the relevance of indigenous communication system in the digital era. Now, I purposely decided to teach this course, now, while we've advanced in other topics, like of course, the last time we looked at social media communication, right? Yeah, I purposely sugar-coated the course so that I'll give you what you know first, and then we go back to the roots. Now, of course, we have told you that before the introduction of the newspapers, radios, TVs, internet, African society has a sophisticated form of communication that enabled people to exchange information. Now, beyond exchanging information, they use this communication pattern to educate, entertain communities, but most especially maintain social order. And this system is generally referred to traditional media or indigenous communication system. Now, at any point you feel you don't understand what I'm trying to explain, please try to call me back. Now, among Igbo people of the southern Nigeria, communication was deeply rooted in culture. What this means is that in Igbo community, you cannot separate communication from our culture. Do you understand? And then, of course, messages were transmitted through speech, music, symbols, festivals, rituals, objects, and community institutions. So, and every communication reflected the people's worldview, belief system, values, and social organization. Now, what this means again is we discover that I want you to cast your mind back to your villages. There are remnants of Igbo culture, cultural values in terms of communication today. And communication is that exchange between either interpersonal or intrapersonal exchange between a person and the other, or even a person and the community. And what we are trying to say is that before the advent of the modern communication as we know it today, there has been communication in every African society, particularly in Igbo communities. And that is what we are trying to explain. And now, how do they communicate? We try to explain that their communication is rooted in their traditional, their belief system, their worldview. I wouldn't know whether any of you has seen that film, The Gods Must Be Crazy, right? You've seen the film? Now, recall what happened in that film. What happened in that film? Who can tell me what happened in the film? Yeah. And then he says that he's going to go to the end of the world. He embarked on a journey to the end of the world where he can throw away that bottle of Coke. To the whites, that was a publicity stunt. They use it to sell Coca-Cola, right? But to Africa, that lampooned our worldviews, our system of communication, that lampooned who we really think we are. First of all, that theme portrayed Africans as those who are still living in the jungle, isn't it? A situation whereby you discover that every white man that just arrived in Nigeria, I used to tell this story. A friend of mine came, I met him, I received him at airport at Abuja. And as we were passing some lovely houses, I never knew this guy had a camera. So we got to some beggars, major people begging. He brought out camera to snap. And I asked him, all this while we are busy passing fine houses, why didn't you snap? The story you want to go and take back to London is that Nigerians are beggars, are poor beggars. And that is what the media has succeeded in doing by what we call the framing theory. The framing theory, how you frame your shots. That's what the media has succeeded in doing. That's when you talk about media from the digital perspective. And then this media from the digital perspective have tried to portray that Africans are people who are living in jungle, people who are keen to mammals, other mammals like the apes, who do not have developed forms of communication. So now what we want to do in this course is to tell you that even before the arrival of the digital communication, that there was a very complex communication system. And one of the things we've established is that this traditional communication system is rooted in our worldview, our culture, our value system, and our social organization. Now, the question you want to ask yourself is what is African worldview? The concept of chi, the concept of the three worldview, the word of the unborn, the word of the living, and the word of the what? The dead, our ancestors, the circle of life. So by the time we go down, you discover that our communication system is rooted in our worldview. As against how we are portrayed by the whites, we have a complex communication system. So traditional communication, as we want to say, remains one of the Africans' oldest and most enduring communication system. Concept of traditional communication. So we want to explain that traditional media are the physical channels. Traditional media. Listen up, everybody. The last time I was trying to introduce, about a month ago or thereabout, we are trying to introduce the course. What did I tell you about the concept of the mediation of platformization? What did I tell you about that, Clinton? When I was trying to introduce this course, what is the definition of media? What is the definition of media? Mediated platform, what does it mean? That media. Who can help out? Mediated device. What is mediated device? What is the role of mediated device in communication? I don't need chorus answer, please. Yeah. The tool used in transmitting information to the larger audience. Have we understood this? A tool used to transmit information to a larger audience, right? Now, the concept of traditional media. So at this point, without looking at the screen, who can tell me what he understands as the concept of traditional media?
The concept of traditional media talks about the early age, how our ancestors or the early men used symbols or some equipment in their communication.
All right, that is the concept of communication that you just defined. You see the complex problem. If I say define concept of media to me and you define this, you score 0 because the concept of communication you just defined. So who can tell me the concept of media based on what I told you about mediated devices? So what is the concept of traditional form of media? Yeah, yeah.
This is the fact of passing information through some traditional tools. Traditional tools like paper and the rest of them that use in those days. Some market.
So what is the difference between what he said and what he said? Who can tell me? So tell me the difference between what he said and what he said.
In his point, he mentioned the objects and their significance, but he just defined the meanings. Like he really mentioned prices.
Now, for him, for the traditional communication, we begin to look at forms, how communication is achieved in the or pre-modern African society. Are we communicating? Now, but for him, for the media, you begin to talk about the devices that are used to transmit information. Now, concept of traditional media. Traditional media are the physical channels, tools, symbols, institutions, and performance forms through which indigenous societies communicate information according to their cultural tradition. Remember, traditional media are physical channels, tools, symbols. So I'm going to break down, I'm going to break it down as we continue to go. So now traditional media, like we said, are indigenous because they originate from the people themselves rather than from the imported technologies. They are indigenous because they originate from the people themselves. So a man named Wilson, 1990, defined traditional media as consistent indigenous communication channels developed within the community to satisfy its communication needs. Just like he stated, in Igbo traditional society, there are forms of traditional media. And there are semiotic implications or significances of these traditional media forms. Now, for instance, a sị na ndị Igbo na-ekwu na ka ekwesị akụ ka gị nsi eme. Are you guys not Igbos? I thought you are okay. Ka egwu si ada, right? What does that mean? All right, now, in Igbo society, listen up, everybody. If you read Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, you discovered various forms of this, traditional communication or media communication system. Now, what that means is that in Igbo community, there are certain types of gong you will hear. You will know that a bad thing has happened, that the Iroko has fallen. You know the man called Iroko. Iroko, right? You know that man called Iroko. You don't know that man called Iroko? So when Enoko has fallen, what has happened? A renowned man has died in the society. So you discover that at that point that a renowned person dies in the society, there is a way they will sound a gong. Again, well, there's a work we are doing on Calabare and people, and I got to know that there is something they call Orufe Festival. Orufe that happened in the distant past. And at some point, before that Orufe Festival happened, they sounded a gong. And immediately everybody heard that gong. They knew that this gong is for this festival. Are we communicating? Are we not communicating? So now, the question I'd like you guys to, interrogate right now, cast your mind back to your villages. What are various things, various ways, forms of communication, media communication you can tell me you've witnessed in your village? All right, yes, gunshot. Gunshot is almost a modern form, but at least it's a form of communication, yeah. The use of palm fronts, what does that signify?
For instance, if there's a land use particular land and the case are very different, they usually use farm from marketplace so that in case if someone wants to sell it, by seeing that you that that land is for sale, you can't enter there or do anything, cultivate or
That's fine. It used to say, stay clear. I was at a ceremony of Ikuano people. So what is a festival?
Sir, a festival is a festival that is also done in Abia State. I don't know for other states. It's possible they do it too. But in Abia State, Umuehim to be precise, Umukbe and Umuehim to be precise. A festival is more like a festival where the people in the community come together. It has to do with people communicating with their gods, like the time they bring out to celebrate, dwell on the things of the village. And most of the times it is carried out during the end of the year. And that festival has to do with masquerades, what is it called? Goats, we do slaughter goats and a dance, a particular dance that comes with tying a wrapper by the side of the waist. Our men, most of our men and our women do the waist dance while they welcome the masquerades. And there are actually specific masquerades you're not allowed to see. So in general, the festival was created to bring oneness to the villagers. According to my grandma, she said it was created. It is a time where anybody can go to anybody's house. Anybody is invited. As long as you are somebody who loves peace, anybody is invited to anybody's house, and you can celebrate the oneness of the festival together.
All right, so one more collaboration. Somebody has to collaborate this. That's the only way you guys would be free from it.
Just say that the masquerade, some women.
All right, let's. The most significant thing about a festival that you must know is the slaughtering of the goats, because it is believed that the blood of the goats is used to cleanse the land. Do you understand?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what I understood and collaborated with what she said, what is connecting Abi connoting is that it marks a like is a peaceful festival. It marks peace and it fosters happiness and oneness in the society.
Who else has witnessed a festival? Who has witnessed a festival live before?
The only thing I've like what I noticed that because sometimes if I watch something, I do look for like the precautions. So what I've seen in the this thing that I watched, the masquerade, like it's not all of them that women are allowed to watch. Like before the masquerade come out, they want women. That
It's not true.
Eh?
It's not true. Hmm? The masquerade is seen by both everybody. I took my kids. Listen up. Listen up. There's a research. Can we hear? There's a research I'm conducting right now on Ekpe. I took my kids. None of them was up to 13. 2 years ago, none of them was up to 13. Three of them, including the last in their midst, who was about 9 then, to see the masquerade. And in fact, I recorded it. You get what I'm trying to say? So it's a masquerade festival that is, common to everybody. Now, why did I talk about Ekpe? Why I spoke about Ekpe was that at some point you saw the palm front barricading a particular place that nobody should intrude. So that is a traditional form of communication. Are we communicating? So now let's look at the characteristics of traditional media. Now, the first one is it is indigenous. They originate from the local culture rather than from the foreign influence. Example, the Ikoro. We've talked about the Ikoro. Large wooden steel drum among the Igbo people. Is a purely traditional thing. And then we talked about being community-based. Traditional media primarily serve members of a particular community. What that means is that, okay, now, unlike television that broadcasts globally, traditional media targets specific cultural audience. Let me tell you what that means. In a particular culture or community, when that gong sounds, only those who are from that community will know the meaning of the sounding. Even when the town crier goes to give announcements, because he carries the wooden gong. The king has said this, the king has said that. The way he sounds that gong depicts the kind of communication he wants to give. Are we communicating? Now you talk about the flute, traditional flute. The same flute that is used to praise, do praise singing, that same flute that is blown when somebody has just died. So the type of tune that emanates from it can only be decoded by the people of that community, or at least within the subsets. Are we communicating? Interactive. Now, most times you discover that this thing allows immediate feedback. As the gong town crier is announcing, they are asking him questions and he's giving them answers immediately. Most times you begin to wonder whether the social media that we are working on today drew its concept from this traditional media concept. And of course, go up. Let's look at the orality. Most information transmitted orally rather than writing. Oral transmission, most times called precepts. For those who are Catholics like myself, you begin to look at the traditional precepts. They ask you, was it written in the Bible that, what again? What are they asking us Catholics? Was it written, you're a Catholic, isn't it? Who is a Catholic here? Was it written in the Bible that what should happen? That Mary is an intermediary with God. And then the Catholic will answer what? Now, when they ask you as a Catholic, how do you know that Mary is the intermediary with God? What do you answer?
Through her intercession at
You're not getting it. The answer is that you know that through 100 precepts, Osiaka Feraka, oral traditions, oral what? So that's what the Catholic believe. That everything that is written in the Bible, first of all, the Bible, according to them, was written, first of all, an oral tradition that was written many years, talking about New Testament, many years, over 200-300 years after Jesus Christ was died, right? Meaning that for that 200 years, the stories were held through oral transmission, through this oral transmission, right? before it is now written down. So now, likewise, in some of the stories we have about our culture, African cultures, you discover that it is mainly handed through oral storytelling, folk tales, praise, poetry, proverbs, songs, and so on. Of course, we've talked about cultural and then symbolic. Move up. We've talked about its symbolic nature. Now, talked about palm fronts. White chalk symbolizing peace. White chalk symbolizing peace, kola nut presentation. Eagle feathers, oturugo. When you see eagle feathers, what does it mean? Huh? Eagle feathers means what? Huh? Huh? Keep going. Keep going up. We've talked about its participatory nature. Most times you discover that it's engaging, it engages, participatively. Festivals, masquerades, and so on.